Hey y'all, it's the Southern Woods here, and welcome back to my podcast series called Tale of the Hunt. For this episode, we will be talking about the weekend of September 26th and September 27th. So, early season is starting to die down in Georgia. The weather is slowly getting a little bit cooler. It's a shame because the weekend before this one, I didn't hunt and the temperatures were pretty chilly, and I'm sure deer were walking around everywhere. But the weekend was supposed to be warmer, not too breezy, pretty dead, just like opening weekend. So I woke up Saturday morning fairly early, and for this hunt I decided I was going to hunt by a creek crossing, which I have seen deer cross before. My idea was they'd be feeding by the lake at night and coming back to their bedding areas in the morning, all the while crossing the same creek crossing that I mentioned. So me and my brother set out probably a couple hours before daylight, and I'm not too sure where exactly he hunted. It wasn't too far from me, but I went and I perched. Initially at night, I decided to hunt right on the edge of the creek and the crossing, sort of tucked away within some bushes. And I had good shots on both sides of the creek where it opened up before you cross. So I was there in the dark, and once light came, I decided it's too loud right where I am. I'm going to go on the other side of the creek, and I'm sort of just going to sit on the sloped embankment facing the other side where I originally was. And that way, deer can't see me from both sides, just one. So that's what I did. And I waited for a couple of hours, didn't really hear anything, didn't see anything. So I decided I was going to move within the side of the creek I was facing. So I crossed the creek once again, and I went to an area to where the creek sort of splits off into a tiny little cove, and it sort of opens up and you can see both sides of the creek. I decided I'd hunt there, and I didn't really see anything, got real tired. The day was sort of dragging on. The mosquitoes were really bad since it warmed up again, and the weather was kind of humid. So for that morning hunt, I decided I was going to be done. I'd come back in the evening. So me and my brother, we went back home, and I slept on the porch for probably a couple hours. And when I woke up, I really wasn't feeling too well. Didn't really feel like going back out, but I knew I should. So I decided, where am I going to hunt? I decided I'd hunt closer to the neighborhood, not too far from my car, in between two areas. One where the creek sort of splits off into an open area where I shot a doe a couple years past, and on the other side of the woods, there is a cow pasture. And in between both of that is just a big stretch of mainly pines, but some other hardwoods too. So I decided I'll go venture through there, see if I see any deer sign, and go from there. So evening came, my brother decided he was going to stay and sleep a little bit more, but he told me that he started seeing some fresh rubs while he was down there in the morning. So in my mind, that means that bachelor groups of bucks are probably starting to split up and finding their own territories. And with the forest that I've been hunting, the one by the lake, it's not much of a huge area. And we know there's at least 4 big bucks that we've seen close by. So I don't know how far each of their territories are, like how much it encompasses, because it's not a huge, property besides neighborhoods, if the deer decide to go into neighborhoods. So I'm not too sure about that, but I knew they're probably splitting up, finding their own homes, and especially if they're starting to make rubs. So I set out it wasn't as overcast as it was in the morning. That's something I forgot to mention. It's fairly overcast in the morning. The sun was peeking through here and there in the afternoon. So I go out and I'm walking around, and I see a huge pile of deer crap from a big deer, it seemed, because it was larger than the the usual pile. So I saw that, and I saw some deer tracks and like indented into the soft ground and pine straw. So I knew deer had been there probably since the morning, or at least during the morning, because everything was pretty fresh. So I'm looking around, I'm sort of liking what I'm seeing, and I just see a downhill opening, fairly open, not too far from the main trail. I could see the main trail behind me a little bit. And yeah, it goes downhill and it sort of bends off to the right, and you can't see what's behind the bend, but it looked like maybe a game trail. So I decided to perch up on the hill facing downhill, thinking maybe a deer will come from either side and I'll be able to see within the opening. That's sort of my mindset. I had a good feeling because a lot of wildlife was going on. There was a lot of crows yelling about something. There's a lot of birds and squirrels, and the woods seemed very lively. Everything was out. And I'm sorry if you can hear sirens within the podcast. It sounds like the world is going to an end out there. But I'm sitting there and I wait a couple hours. I'm not seeing, any sign of deer, but wildlife is definitely blooming around me. And it was about 6:30 p.m. when from the bend I see a big bodied deer run out. Now it went so fast I could only see the butt portion of its body, but I could tell it was a big deer. I wasn't sure if it was a buck or doe yet. So it runs off away to where I know it can't see me, and I quickly think, get my deer call. So I get my deer call out and I hit it with a couple social buck grunts. And then I could hear it not stop, but sort of go towards my left, like go around me. And I thought that was good because there's directly to my left, there's pretty much a shooting lane that goes probably about 30-40 yards. So that was good. So I turned towards that and I said, whatever it is, don't go behind me. Don't wrap around behind me, because that put me at a disadvantage. And it briefly goes within the opening. I could tell it's a big doe. Not a buck, but a doe. But that's alright with me, because I don't really hunt for sport. Hunt for meat mainly. So it wraps around behind me. Exactly what I didn't want to do. But I knew it didn't sense me. Or it wasn't really acting like it sensed me. So I turn around 180 into my chair to where I'm facing behind me. And my chair's at a bad angle. So I already had a bad feeling about that. But I'm watching the deer and it's sort of looking around, not towards me, and the doe stops. And in between some trees, I have a nice broadside shot. So I was like, alright. So I try to aim down my scope, and it's just a little too far. I'm too wobbly. I'm at a bad angle. I knew I'd miss if I shot. So okay, what am I gonna do? Well, there is a fairly large, well, not fairly large, but there's a pine tree dead, leaning against another tree in front of where I was looking, enough to where I could lean against it with my crossbow and steady up my aim towards the deer. And I was surprised that the deer hadn't moved yet. So I did that quickly. I'm looking through. I'm still a little shaky, but I think, alright, I'll just lean a tad more and then fire. So that's what I do. I put a little bit more pressure on the dead tree, ready, aim, squeeze, and right as I pull the trigger, the tree I'm leaning against snaps and I fall as I shoot. So I breathe in, ready, aim, fire, it snaps, I fall, I shoot, and you don't have to be blind. to know that I did not hit the deer. I definitely heard the arrow hit wood and not a living thing. But I get off my ass and I look and I see the deer hop away, run away. But it was more of a what just happened sort of thing, because it didn't blow. So I knew, there could be a chance it comes back. So I quickly get my cock rope, cock back my crossbow again, put another arrow in, and this time I reposition my chair, looking towards the sort of area where I last saw the deer run to. And then I noticed my arrow in a tree. Not a good shot since I fell. If the tree was a deer, I would have shot it dead center, but, whatever. So I'm looking around there, I'm kind of shaky, the adrenaline from everything that just happened. And I guess the deer sort of snuck around me again, and I wasn't looking in the direction where it snuck around me. And, at this point, it definitely knows that I'm a threat. It looks at me, and it blows, and it runs away finally. So I was like, shit. I knew it was bad news bears, and, I still had a little bit of time left before it got dark, but not probably about an hour or so, maybe a little less. So I waited there disappointed, didn't see anything else. So before I left, my arrow wasn't damaged, but the broadhead was stuck in the tree, so I just unscrewed the arrow and said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get another broadhead when I get home. So I went home after that evening hunt feeling pretty defeated, and I was debating whether or not to even hunt in the morning. I felt good about the same area, but I didn't want to put too much pressure on it. I said, we'll see how I feel in the morning. Next morning rolls around. I wake up, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good about this. Let's go. I decided to go in the same area, and I had a specific spot in mind because before I left in the evening, I noticed it walking on the way out. It was just, how am I going to get there in the dark? Because there's, besides a couple stumps, I had no idea really where it was. So I go in the morning. Once again, the air's pretty calm, not too much of a breeze. It's still pretty warm, a little bit chillier this morning than the one before. So I said, okay, maybe something will be moving around. So I set off at night, this time a little bit later, I think. Maybe about the same, a couple hours before daybreak. And I'm looking for my spot. I'm trying to make too much noise, but I am. And then finally I find it after probably about 20 minutes of searching, longer than I wanted to. And it's the same sort of deal. It's a downhill open area, except there's a little bit more vegetation, and behind me there's a little bit more cover. It's a lot of thick stuff, maybe even some bedding within it. So it's kind of risky. And to the left of me there's a tree, and to the right of me there's a tree. I basically sat in between these two pine trees. I said, screw it with my stool. I'm just going to sit on the ground because it was too much of an angle. So I sat down, and it was dark, and things felt good. I could hear some movement around me throughout the night. So I was like, all right, have to be on my A game, because I know deer travel this specific area a lot. And I'm sitting down, and then it gets lighter, and finally it's just about light enough to where I could see through my scope good. And for some reason I had the urge, I was like, let me get my binoculars out of my bag. It's more of a downhill shot than the previous spot from the evening. Maybe I could use the binoculars to see deer in between the trees. So I'm digging through my binoculars, and I'm trying to get them, and I finally grab them, and I set them on the ground. Right once I do that, I hear a deer blow at me. I'm like, oh gosh. But it didn't run. It blew again and again and again. And It wasn't even running. If anything, it was getting a little bit closer, and it was directly behind me. So I couldn't just turn around because I didn't want to completely scare it off. It wasn't moving, but I thought, all right, this is either a very territorial buck, trying to set up his dominance in this area, or it's a mama deer very pissed off at me. But I didn't hear any other footsteps or anything like that, so I assumed it was a buck. It just kept on blowing at me. I just didn't know what to do. I was trying to stay still, but when you have a big old animal behind you, asserting its dominance, and you're on the ground and you're not at a good vantage point, it's like, geez. It's like, I didn't want it to run. I didn't know what I wanted it to do. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't really been in that sort of situation before. And it must have blew a total of 15, 20 times before it finally ran off. And it ran off behind me. I was like, oh, jeez. So I try to get my bearings together, and I know the buck ran a good distance, but probably still within earshot. So I whip out the social grunt call again, and I do it a couple times, but I assume what was the buck, he wasn't having any of it. He ran off eventually, and I knew anything in that area was going to be gone since the buck blew so many times, so loud. So I wasn't feeling too hot about the rest of my hunt, and like I suspected, I didn't see anything. So I went home in defeat and watched the Falcons choke another game against the Bears. So overall, it was a fairly exciting weekend. Shot at something, missed, saw a doe and probably heard a buck, and just a fair amount of action for early season. And now it's, again, transitional phase into the pre-rut, which is exciting. I wish the weather was a little bit cooler. I wish it was a little bit more breezy and the mosquitoes weren't as bad, because they were pretty bad this weekend, especially Saturday. But yeah, it was unfortunate I didn't get anything, but I'm going to get back at it a couple weeks from now. The weekend of October 10th is the next time we'll be hunting. We'll be hunting one more time by the lake where it's bow only until we hunt a lot more up in the hunting club when gun season starts. So I'm confident that there will probably be even more action since it'll be cooler by early mid-October, and the pre-rut should be definitely setting in. So we'll see. I'm probably going to hunt around the same area. May try around the lake bed, since the lake should be a little bit further down. But yeah, I'm not too sure exactly, but I'm confident. I got some excitement in me now, and I just want to get back out there. But yeah, that was the hunt for this weekend. I hope y'all enjoyed. I'm trying to keep the podcast a little bit shorter and less drawn out. If y'all want to hear... Oh, that was my dog. If you want to hear some guests, like my brother, cousin, friend, whoever goes hunting with me, let me know. I know it'd probably be a lot more entertaining than just me storytelling. So anyways, that'll do it for this second episode of The Tale of the Hunt. And hope y'all enjoyed. The Southern Woods out.